Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Picture this. For the last few years, the American stock market has basically been one giant casino betting on artificial intelligence. I mean, it's been driving almost all the major market gains. But what if the foundation of that entire massive boom is suddenly threatened? And not by a lack of innovation, but by a ruthless, hyper-efficient pricing war happening on the exact opposite side of the globe. Look, we are witnessing a modern-day geopolitical thriller right now, and it's being fought not with traditional weapons, but with silicon, data, and algorithms. To really wrap our heads around the scale of this, we have to look back at January 2025. That is when a single, incredibly efficient Chinese AI model called DeepSeek wiped out $1 trillion in US market value in a single day. Yep, you heard that right, $1 trillion. It hit the market like an absolute meteorite. Literally overnight, investors looked at this cheap, highly capable Chinese model and suddenly started questioning the entire narrative that the US was going to maintain unchallenged global leadership in AI. So that brings us to the real elephant in the room. With astronomical infrastructure debt piling up here at home and rising geopolitical tensions abroad, is the American AI industry fundamentally at risk of a massive collapse? Are we building the future, or are we just constructing a trillion-dollar house of cards?
Section 1. The trillion-dollar shock.
DeepSeek's R1 model rolling onto the scene wasn't just some cool technical achievement for China. It was a devastating commercial reality check for the US. Major American companies like Coinbase, for example, realized they could slash their tech bills nearly in half simply by moving their engineers off of premium US frontier models and onto these cheaper Chinese alternatives. And when American corporations start shopping overseas for AI because the domestic options are just way too expensive, well, it fundamentally threatens the revenue streams that US companies absolutely depend on to survive. Section 2, the Great AI Lockdown. That financial threat quickly escalated into a crazy tit-for-tat standoff, with both superpowers locking down their most sensitive digital assets in a matter of weeks. Check this out. On June 27th, the US deploys a highly specialized cybersecurity model called Mythos 5 to protect critical infrastructure. Instantly, the environment tenses up. By early July, China's vulnerability database warns that American coding tools might contain backdoors transmitting location data. Simultaneously, OpenAI readies its GPT 5.6 launch under strict US government review. And then, by July 15th, Chinese tech giants like Alibaba and ByteDance begin shutting down user-created AI agents to comply with strict new state regulations. It turned into a perfect mirror image standoff. So, in response to all this, China's Ministry of Commerce actually pushed back aggressively, considering unprecedented restrictions on their own popular, highly capable open-source models. The logic from Beijing's perspective makes total sense. If models like Qwen and GLM 5.2 are matching Western performance at a fraction of the cost, why on earth let foreign developers use them freely? They do not want to effectively hand over strategic, national-grade technology to the West. They're now looking at treating AI theft as a national security crime and heavily scrutinizing foreign capital.
Section 3. Stealing the AI blueprint.
But to understand why these Chinese models are so threatening, we have to look at how they are built without spending billions of dollars and massive amounts of energy on colossal data centers. Chinese labs use a hyper-efficient workaround called distillation. Think of it as the AI equivalent of having someone else do all the incredibly hard, expensive research, and then you just cleanly copy their final notes. Now, the White House and major US companies like Anthropic allege there's a deliberate industrial-scale campaign going on to steal American AI blueprints. And the alleged process? It's surprisingly straightforward. First, you create tens of thousands of fake accounts. Then you pump millions of complex queries into top-tier US frontier models. Next, you capture all those brilliant outputs. And finally, you use that perfectly polished data to train a much smaller, cheaper domestic model. The really crucial point here is that this strategy completely bypasses the need for advanced US chips. Anthropic literally went to the US Senate Banking Committee to accuse Alibaba of running 16 million queries through 24,000 fake accounts just to clone their Claude model. An accusation that Alibaba firmly denies, by the way. But whether it's this specific case or just the broader trend, this distillation tactic gives China a massive asymmetric advantage in this geopolitical thriller. It's effectively using US innovation to undercut US revenue. Section 4. The hardware choke point. All this brings us to the physical reality of AI, which is essentially a microscopic battleground. A staggering 70% of the world's highly advanced semiconductors flow through Taiwan, specifically from companies like TSMC. This creates an absolute undeniable choke point for the global AI arms race. Without these tiny chips, none of these massive AI models can even exist. Both superpowers know this, for sure, and their strategies are colliding head-on. The U.S. strategy is to heavily restrict China's access to top-tier Nvidia chips while pouring $280 billion into the CHIPS Act to onshore American production. But look, while the U.S. tries to block access, Chinese companies like DeepSeek aren't just sitting on their hands. They are quietly hiring engineers and building their own proprietary inference chips to completely eliminate their reliance on American hardware. If they pull that off, the U.S. loses its biggest point of leverage. Section 5. A financial ticking bomb. Okay, this is where the math gets genuinely scary for the US market. The biggest American tech players are essentially playing a high-stakes game of chicken. They are pouring an estimated 94% of their core business cash flow directly into building AI infrastructure. 94%. They're betting the absolute farm that the eventual payoff is going to cover these astronomical costs. But the payoff required here is monumental. Sequoia, which is one of the most prominent venture capital firms in the world, estimates that the AI industry now needs to generate a jaw-dropping $600 billion in new annual revenue just to justify the money they have already spent on infrastructure. $600 billion in brand new revenue. Right now, the industry is nowhere near that. And with Chinese open-source models driving the actual price of AI usage down, American companies are really struggling to charge the premiums they desperately need. If revenue doesn't catch up to the debt, the US AI boom risks turning into a full-blown financial contagion, kind of like the 2008 housing crisis or the 2001 dot-com bubble. Section 6. The Digital Iron Curtain. Ultimately, what we are witnessing is the birth of two parallel, competing digital ecosystems. On one side, you have a US ecosystem defined by massive infrastructure debt, lockdown closed frontier models, and government-backed regulatory moats designed to protect against foreign threats. On the other side, a Chinese ecosystem characterized by strict state direction, incredibly efficient distillation tactics, and the aggressive deployment of low-cost models. Moving forward, global developers and multinational companies are probably going to be forced to pick a side. Former U.S. Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson perfectly captured the gravity of this moment when he called this fracturing an economic iron curtain. This marks a total, historic departure from the open, collaborative tech world we've all grown up with over the last 30 years. The days of a single unified global internet, they might literally be coming to a close. So, I want to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up. When brilliant minds across the globe can no longer collaborate, do we push harder out of pure competition, or do we just stall human progress? It really is the defining tech question of our decade. Thank you so much for watching this explainer. If you want to dive deeper into topics just like this, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks again, and I'll catch you in the next one.